Hello, this is Bruce Wan, Head of Research for MaxCap. In this video, I want to explore a very topical issue confronting builders right now. Specifically, how does the Strait of Hormuz closure, the disruption in global oil supplies, and the spike in local fuel prices combine to impact construction costs? Are we looking at another significant round of cost inflation in 2026? And how does it compare to the last episode nearly 5 years ago? Before we get into all that, let's take a step back and start with the bigger picture. With the war in Iran, we have seen the Strait of Hormuz closed to shipping traffic since late February 2026. What was a vital logistical channel carrying 100 ships a day and 20% of the world's oil have largely seized up overnight. Even if there was a miraculous reopening tomorrow, the next Gulf oil shipment will not reach our shore for at least 2 more months. The disrupted supply chains for oil, gas and industrial chemicals are steadily radiating around the world. For now, this is just translating to higher fuel prices and declining fuel reserves, but if this interruption continues for much longer, this will eventually intensify into a global economic downturn. Not surprisingly, the biggest concern for the construction sector right now is higher fuel prices and what that means for building material costs. Certainly, this is not a new situation for most builders, coming fresh on the heels of the COVID supply chain disruption from 2021. For the record, construction costs lifted by around 30% over a 2-year time frame. Many builders were caught out with fixed cost contracts and no channel to renegotiate their margins. In 2026, we are looking at another round of inflation. We know that builders are a little wiser now, with more room to negotiate on input costs. Nevertheless, the number one question from builders today is, are we facing a similar round of inflation this time around? We can answer that question in several ways. Looking at this chart, we can consider a simple correlation of crude oil prices on the one hand, along with construction costs on the other. Over any span of history, we can see a relationship between the two, with oil prices leading construction costs by around 3 months in Australia and around 6 months in New Zealand. Given the size of the oil price increase so far, partially offset by a temporary reduction in fuel excises, we are expecting a corresponding increase in building costs of the order of 10% or so. At the same time, we can conduct a more detailed accounting exercise using input-output weights for the residential and non-residential building sectors, feeding in likely price increases of petrol, diesel, plastic, fuel, ceramics, and so forth, and end up with a similar construction cost inflation impact. In reality, these are our best estimates at a particular point in time, which may change abruptly with the volatile day-to-day movement in oil and gas prices. Nevertheless, we are getting a consistent sense that, so far with the extent of the disruption we've seen to date, this is shaping up to be a less disruptive shock than we have seen previously, with the oil price shocks in the late 1970s and the COVID disruption of the early 2020s. Altogether, there are big uncertainties around the construction sector for the year ahead, especially with the impending squeeze on margins and high input costs. That said, this is a very predictable process that we have seen several times before, and builders have managed to get through a lot worse. From our lender's perspective, we are taking the usual precautions, closely reviewing borrower cash flows and stress testing loan books, but so far this inflation shock is looking less severe than previous ones. Meanwhile, there's still robust housing demand given our resilient population growth. Recent tax changes in Australia will encourage more investors into new buildings at the expense of older housing stock. So there are still good reasons to build in 2026. You can read more about this analysis in our report online. As always, you can find out more about the opportunities by talking to our capital team. This has been Bruce Wan for MaxCap.